Good morning, this is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. Moscow continues to attack Ukrainian critical infrastructure and civilian homes. Russian drones once again swarmed Ukraine overnight. One person was killed and at least 4 others were injured in a drone strike on Pavlohrad in the Dnipropetrovsk region of central eastern Ukraine. Local authorities say 5 houses caught fire during the attack, with 1 completely destroyed. All fires have since been extinguished by emergency crews. Another overnight Russian drone strike hit an infrastructure in the southern port city of Odesa, leaving parts of the city without electricity and water. More than 200 billion euros in Russian state assets could be locked away permanently under a legal workaround approved by EU ambassadors. The move sharply reduces the chance that Moscow-leaning members, including Hungary, could reverse course. Our correspondent Alex Kadir has this report.
Well, this decision to keep Russia's frozen assets indefinitely frozen is actually a significant development from the European Union. It had become a rather familiar dance in Brussels. Those sanctions, of which the frozen assets are part, have to be renewed every 6 months. That meant there was a dance every half a year, every 6 months. Hungary saying they would block the renewal of the sanctions, which would unfreeze the assets and potentially send them back to Russia. The European Union having to find a way to pressure Hungary, to force them to come on board, to not have a veto, to be able to block the renewal of those sanctions and keep the assets frozen. That dance will not happen any longer. They will stay frozen indefinitely under new powers given to the European Commission, that building behind me. Now, why does this matter? Beyond avoiding Hungary using this as leverage every 6 months, it was also a hope from the Kremlin and to an extent from Washington, D.C. and the Trump administration that these assets would be returned to Russia as part of a peace deal, as part of peace negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. Well, the conditions have now changed. The European Union says these assets will only return to Russia after the end of its war of aggression against Ukraine. And the crucial detail, after Russia has paid reparations to Ukraine as well. It is not just about ending the war, it is also Russia having to pay for the damage it has done with its invasion. That means Europe has solidified its position, keeping these assets frozen indefinitely and not allowing them to be used as a bargaining chip for Donald Trump to come with a quick peace deal for Ukraine, but making sure Ukraine gets what it's owed when it comes to Russia's aggression. In Brussels, I'm Alex Kadir for TVP World.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says Kyiv is in talks with the United States on a framework for security guarantees, even as Washington presses Ukraine to consider giving up the Donbas under a potential peace deal. A day after submitting a counterproposal to end the war, Zelenskyy said any decision on ceding territory should be made by Ukrainians through a referendum.
Just a day after Ukraine submitted its counter-proposal on a plan to end the war with Russia, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said he is negotiating with the US on one of its key points.
About an hour ago, we had conversation with the United States team about possible security guarantees for Ukraine, and we are working on a framework document, and it must be strong enough to truly work.
Zelenskyy added that the document should be approved by the US Congress in a bid to ensure the security guarantees can be implemented. Earlier on Thursday, Zelenskyy said a potential peace agreement may require Ukraine to cede some of its territory. A decision, he said, should be made by the people through a referendum. Zelenskyy's comments come amid mounting pressure from the US, which is calling the embattled country to give up the mineral-rich Donbas region under a potential peace deal.
As talks continue over a possible peace deal, attention is turning to whether Kyiv may be willing to compromise. President Zelenskyy has made clear that any territorial concessions would require public approval. Roland Paris, a professor of public and international affairs at the University of Ottawa, shared his assessment in an interview with TVP World.
I think Kyiv is in a position where they have to navigate their relations with the Trump administration. They certainly don't want to be perceived in Washington and by Trump in particular as an obstacle to peace. But on the other hand, the Trump administration just released its national security strategy. It talked about trying to reestablish what it called strategic stability with Russia, but it doesn't seem to recognize that strategic stability with Russia is going to require strength in order to deter Russia. So it's really unclear where Trump is going to end up going with this.
The United States and the EU will hold talks in Paris this weekend on Europe's counterproposals to the Ukraine peace plan. According to Axios, national security advisors from the United States, Ukraine, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom are expected to attend. President Donald Trump says Washington will only join if there is a real chance of progress, warning the White House will not waste time on failed diplomacy.
Well, there's a meeting on Saturday. We'll see whether or not we attend the meeting. We said we'll attend the meeting if we think there's a good chance of they want me to attend, they want us to attend. And we'll be attending the meeting on Saturday in Europe if we think there's a good chance. And we don't want to waste a lot of time. We think it's negative. We want it to get settled. We want to save a lot of lives.
Estonia is ramping up its defense posture. From 2027, all conscripts will serve a full year in mandatory military service as the country adapts to a more volatile security environment. Estonia will extend compulsory military service to 12 months from 2027, applying the new model to all conscripts, the country's defense ministry has announced. Officials say the change reflects the deteriorating security situation in the region and lessons drawn from Russia's war in Ukraine. The longer service period is also tied to more complex training and the introduction of modern weapon systems. Under the new system, conscripts will complete a 6 months of intensive training, followed by 6 months of combat exercises. Estonia's armed forces rely heavily on reservists, with around 4,000 people conscripted each year in a country of 1.37 million. Polish and Ukrainian lawmakers met in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv for the 14th Interparliamentary Assembly, reaffirming security operation, military aid, and support for Ukraine as the war continues.
Lviv became the ground for a major meeting between Polish and Ukrainian MPs, the 14th such parliamentary session of its kind. Security and further aid to Ukraine featured as key points of their talks.
First of all, this is an issue of security and cooperation in the field of defense. It is extremely important for Ukraine. You yourselves understand this, given how difficult the times. We would like to thank Poland for its unprecedented support, including its military assistance. Today, Denis Shmyhal also spoke, announcing that Poland is providing Ukraine with 100 million euros in aid, specifically for air defense.
Poland reiterated its support for Ukraine, both in its peace negotiations as well as its EU bid.
Poland has always supported and will continue to support Ukraine. We also do this through the European Union as well as within the coalition of the willing. Prime Minister of Poland Donald Tusk as well as Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski have been emphasizing that everything concerning Ukraine must happen with Ukrainian participation and that nothing can be decided behind Ukraine's back. They also stress that there can be no talk about changing the world's borders by force. In our joint declaration, which we signed today within the framework of the Interparliamentary Assembly, we condemn this unprovoked invasion.
Poland signals readiness to further assist fleeing Ukrainian refugees in the fourth winter of Russia's full-scale war.
Polish authorities have detained Russian archaeologist Alexander Butyagin, who is accused by Ukraine of stealing historical artifacts in occupied Crimea. Kyiv is seeking his extradition. The case comes after Warsaw and Kyiv recently signed a new agreement aimed at fighting cross-border crime.
It was revealed on Thursday that Polish authorities had detained a Russian archaeologist by the name of Alexander Butyagin last week.
This is connected to a request from the Ukrainian authorities who suspect this person of the theft of cultural artifacts, to put it mildly.
According to Kyiv, the man is responsible for the unauthorized excavation and plundering of historical artifacts in Russian-occupied Crimea.
According to the documentation provided by the Ukrainian side, the man was initially carrying out legal archaeological excavations in Ukraine. Later, when the war broke out and the area came under Russian occupation, he was already breaking the law, including international law, by robbing the Ukrainian state of the objects that archaeologists were digging up there.
Moscow has demanded Butyagin's immediate release, but according to a statement from the Polish prosecutors, the man will be held in custody for 40 days while the authorities await an extradition request from Ukraine. If extradited, the man could face up to 10 years in prison. This comes as Poland and Ukraine signed a new agreement on Thursday detailing the country's cooperation on fighting crime.
Hackers claim they have broken into a company involved in Russia's digital military draft system, potentially disrupting a platform used to call up soldiers during wartime. An anti-conscription group says hackers breached a Russian software company that helps run the country's electronic draft registry. Anti-war activist Grigory Sverdlin says the hackers accessed internal files, source code, and communications linked to the system. He claims the breach could prevent authorities from sending electronic draft notice for months. The registry is believed to hold data for around 30 million draft-age men. The company, MyCord, confirmed that it was hacked but did not explain its role. Russia's defense ministry, however, rejected the claims, calling them false and insisting the system is working normally. Lithuanian truck drivers are caught in a political standoff, with authorities in Russia-allied Belarus blocking their return home. Dozens of vehicles have been stranded at the border for more than a month as Minsk clashes with both Vilnius and Warsaw over security concerns.
Rows of trucks have taken over the center of Vilnius, and no, it's not a scene from a new Transformers movie. What it is Lithuanian drivers demanding action from the government over the dozens of trucks stuck in Belarus. They've been held at the border crossings for over a month without explanation.
The situation is dire. 90% of our transportation is stranded here.
We paid 4,800 euros for 4 trailers, and no one is letting us leave. We're losing money, finances, and there's even talk of some companies going bankrupt. This is very important to us.
Belarus, Russia's closest ally in Europe, has been at odds with Lithuania and Poland over a plethora of security issues concerning their borders. Belarusian smugglers have been sending waves of balloons over Lithuanian airspace, carrying mostly illegal cigarettes. This has caused more than a dozen major airport disruptions. Vilnius responded by first temporarily closing its borders and now has gone as far as to introduce a state of emergency, leaving the truck drivers stuck in the middle of a diplomatic tug-of-war.
Our first request in this petition is the return of our vehicles, which are currently in Belarus through no fault of our own. Should a stalemate arise and our vehicles be confiscated, we demand compensation for the vehicles at market prices.
Belarus is an important hub for many transport companies conducting business with Asia. But passing through the country is risky because of the man in charge, authoritarian self-proclaimed leader Alexander Lukashenko. His regime is currently holding more than 1,000 political prisoners behind bars, including Polish activist Andrzej Poczobut, who was recently awarded the Sakharov Prize.
For Lukashenko, he is one of the most precious hostages. Andrzej Poczobut is a symbolic figure. It's a symbolic figure for Poles and both Belarusians as well. That's why I know that Warsaw is struggling for Andrzej Poczobut, but the price of his releasement could be very high.
Previous releases of political prisoners usually involved diplomatic pressure from the United States. But Lithuanian truck drivers are technically not political prisoners. They're stuck in a limbo, unofficial hostages of the Belarusian regime. For TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.